Just wanted to kind of run this by you and show you where I'm at now with your plans for your garden, just before we sort of create the proper layout sheets for your chosen landscaper. So obviously, you know, your little tweaks that you'd sort of come up with from the last set of plans is to incorporate this shed, which I've sort of drawn out to scale there. And I think I've sort of toyed with the idea of having this shed kind of this way, or kind of I've had it rotated the other way. And on balance, actually, if I just bob this down, I think having it go in sort of sideways this way so that the longest edge is up against the boundary of your garden might be less impactful on the design. And what I've done is I've been sort of playing with, you know, ideas of another kind of uh, area of screening and hedging there. And I think that works quite nicely. I know when you're going to be sitting up in this end, you will get a sort of full view that way. But I think on balance, if this is quite an attractive new shed, that will be okay. And I've sort of put in one of these pent designs rather than an apex shed, because again it's slightly less impactful on the kind of overall view. So you know, when you're sort of sitting down in your terrace and looking down, it is pretty much hidden. I'm not saying that we can hide it completely, but it's not drawing the eye, it's not a main focal point. What I was finding was that having it the other way kind of made it seem, I'll just sort of show you this, just made it seem like it was a kind of viewpoint main focus. So I'll just spin this around. Even if you have a kind of hedge or something in front of it, just seems like you were looking straight down into it. And I've kind of indicated here that we could grow hedging to keep that kind of look, you know, across the front here. I'm sort of thinking something like a cherry laurel or a Portuguese laurel that would grow to a substantial height. You're still kind of front on to that shed if we don't have it the other way. So yeah, that's kind of, let's just put it back. That's kind of where I'd got to thinking it's probably the best position. So let's just pop in the planting. I'm just going to show you now that I've been working. Oh, what a difference, look. So that's the sort of ground layout and the ground pattern that I've been working to, just to make sure I get all the proportions right. And then we see it with the proper planting in place. This isn't a proper planting plan by any stretch of the imagination, but I've just sort of had to think about where the taller things would go and where colour would go. I think it would be nice to keep it fairly subdued on this side with kind of shrub planting, and then on this raised planter we could have some splashes of colour and some sort of perennials and sort of flowering plants. Nothing too high maintenance, you know, all fairly easy keep kind of stuff. And then now you can sort of see the trees in there. I do apologise, my use of this program is not very advanced. I couldn't find an exact image of the kind of tree I do want to use here. They wouldn't have fruit on them. I think these have got some kind of fruit. I don't know what these are supposed to be, but anyway, I'm not suggesting we grow fruit trees here, but it's just to give you an idea of the added height and privacy you will have in this new garden. You'll have the peach trees coming across here, so this back area will be screened off. Beautiful backdrop with planting in front. You'll have these three fastigiate kind of hornbeam. There'll be a really smart kind of tulip shaped tree in these three clipped boxed hedge squares. And then you've got your little chill out area here. Oops, that fire pit looks rather huge. For the moment, I mean, this is something I wanted to ask you. I've just popped in a kind of bought off the shelf fire pit. There's lots of beautiful ones on the market. You might want something fairly plain, or depending on how much you want to spend, and I guess it will all depend on your overall budget for the whole landscaping, you can get some really fantastic globe fire pits with beautiful cutout designs around them. They can get quite pricey, but they are beautiful. Or you could go for something very simple like this, perhaps in Corten steel, pick up the russet tones of the deck. Or of course you could have it inbuilt. You could have a built-in brick built sort of fire pit there. So I wasn't sure. That's one thing to ask for your feedback on just before we go to final plan. I like your idea of using the resin bonded gravel here, so that's absolutely fine. Again, I just need to confirm, oh excuse me, I've got big lorries going past my office. Just need to confirm with you kind of if you're okay with these shapes and the positioning of these sort of box balls, because obviously if we're now having quite a structured resin, we would need to allow space for those and actually plan it properly. So I've kind of spaced out 1, 2, 3 and 2 there. I would need to draw in, if you're happy with the position of these, I would need to draw in a little square around them just to sort of designate that they would need to be obviously planted in a planting hole, and then the resin sort of poured up and around. We would need a little barrier sort of around them. That's not a problem. I've seen it done lots of times, but it's just whether you wanted these over to one side or whether you actually want to walk through, you know, and I could have these sort of dotted around a bit more randomly like this. You know, and if you want to sort of walk through them like that. So let me know, perhaps you could draw some little squiggles on the paper, or just let me know whether you prefer it all to one side. I've kept it to one side for now so that you've got a straight passage sort of through when you're walking through, and obviously you need to get through to the hot tub. What else? Yes, so we were just talking about, I'll just spin this around so you can see it in its full glory. There you go, rather pleased with this one. I think it's going to be beautiful, it's going to be a lovely space. Yeah, so this area over to the left, couple of options here. Let's just wait for the computer to write itself. Again, excuse my graphic, I seem to have some kind of mulberry tree here, but I couldn't find a fir, so let's just hide the big tree out of the way. Something which I think would work fairly well is to put extra horizontal battens on top of your fence. This can be done in a number of ways, just up to where the edge of the deck here, where the hedge and the pleach trees are going to start in this back area. Now, again, depending on budget, you can do this with beautiful hardwood, sort of cedar hardwood, a little bit like this. Let me just see if I can find an image. This is Western red cedar. This kind of thing is what I was thinking of, the sort of horizontal battens, just to give you another bit of height, sort of a foot above the fence line. They can be attached. You can see here this is an existing wall, and it's been put on posts and raises up the height of the boundary there. Here's quite a good little before and after of a wall. I can't find one of it attached to a fence, but I know it can be done. You can literally kind of extend your existing fence posts, and you can attach battens to the back or the front. It won't matter, it still looks attractive, but I think it's just a bit nicer than the sort of traditional trellis, especially in this lovely modern garden. So that would be my preferred option if you would go for something like that. What you can do on a budget is, rather than using hardwood, which would be lovely, but I know it's going to put the costs up, you can actually use roof battens, which is a softwood, and you can stain them. So it's a bit of a cheat that my landscaper uses for me sometimes, and he makes up his own kind of trellis screens for me out of roof battening material. and it's great. It gives you this same effect, but it's about half the cost. So that's an idea. The other idea I was toying with is using this kind of instant screening. You might have seen this in bars and restaurants sometimes. A living fence panel you can have clad in sort of something like ivy. Now I know ivy doesn't sound very attractive, but the whole idea is that it just gives you this instant barrier screening. So there's it's kind of like a cross between a hedge and a fence, really. So what you get is you get sort of troughs that you can either bury on the ground or you can have them above ground. And there's a trellis system, and the plant is already trained up the trellis system. And I think it's quite effective, really. So you can do this sort of thing in wooden troughs or stainless steel troughs and things. So yeah, here's an image of one that's been used instead of fence panels, but there's no reason why you can't put it in front of fence panelling that already exists. So you could, for example, in this area, just have 2 troughs either side of this existing upstand, and have 2 troughs of kind of green material that are very narrow. It doesn't take up much room like a fence does, and that would give you an extra bit of height there above that fence line. And while I was looking into that, it kind of made me think that that might be a good idea anyway on this side. The graphic is terrible, I do apologise. It's not kind of the effect I wanted, but that's, as I say, that's just the programme. But I've sort of suggested that we put 2 here. I think this could be quite nice. You could have stainless steel or black kind of metal containers with the ivy screens right up next to each other to sort of screen off and give you a green screen, you know, from this view, so that when you're looking out through the windows you're not just immediately looking straight at the side of the hot tub. I think on the previous plan I did have pots with foliage planting in it, but if you know, that was my final thing to suggest, if you liked this idea, then I would swap it over to suggest these living screens, these ivy screens. Yeah, I think that's about it. So let me know your thoughts on all those things, whether you want me to change the shed position or whether you're happy with it there, with the hedge, the fire pits, whether you would like it built in or whether you were thinking a freestanding one, position of these box ball spheres, whether you're happy with them over to the left and I'll draw squares around them for the resin, and then finally the screening options, whether you're up for this idea of battening across the top and whether you like these things. So there we go. I shall leave it with you. Hope you're pleased with that. I think it's coming together quite nicely. It's just sort of final touches now. Oh, one thing that we haven't even mentioned yet is what material you would like to go for the new sort of terraced areas. Completely budget dependent, and I know we haven't really sort of discussed your budget very much for the actual build, and you know, you'll get quotes in and stuff, but I guess it's good to start from a place of an absolute ideal and then take it back from there if it comes in, you know, too high. So I mean, I would suggest, if you'd like to look at some paving, definitely a smooth honed paver, so nothing with a texture. I think for this kind of contemporary look we need to go smooth, so either a smooth honed sandstone or porcelain. So porcelain is a little bit more pricey at the moment, but there are some beautiful porcelains around and an awful lot of colour choices. So if I could perhaps ask for your input there as to what you're sort of erring towards. I would sort of make some suggestions. Perhaps look at something like Marshalls. if I just bring that up, sorry to do this kind of on video, but Marshalls have some great products, and there are lots of other things available. Lots of other, you might have a local suppliers that can get you something very similar, but their vitrified, they call it, paving, I've used quite a lot. So I've used this product, the Arento, which is a beautiful porcelain, and it comes in a few different colours. It comes in these kind of silvers or a bronze or a creamy beige. I've obviously put on my design a sort of lighter colour, which I think, as long as you don't mind the maintenance and sort of keeping it clean, I think it gives quite a nice fresh look, and it tones in beautifully with your decking. So rather than this silver grey, which I don't think would work beautifully for your garden, I think possibly something like this kind of Arento light beige colour would work really nicely. Or the Symphony is slightly more expensive. This comes in a variety of sizes as well. This is really beautiful, the Symphony Barley, and it's really nice to have these big rectangular slabs rather than a square slab. And this is called a brick bond, so it's kind of offset so that you get you know, the joints run in sort of staggered joints, which is rather nice. So I would definitely suggest that we just choose one size of the paving rather than having mixed random sizes, and have it in quite a modern kind of lay pattern like this. This is a bit deceiving actually, because it's laid at an angle, so the mortar joints aren't quite lined up, but you get the idea. So have a look perhaps at Marshall's catalogue. Oh, that's a better idea. That's the Symphony. Have a look through, see if there's anything that takes your eye. By all means, you know, perhaps get some samples ordered in. I don't know if you're already speaking to landscapers or have got somebody in mind, but it's good to have a look, and I will mark up on the plan, you know, whatever you sort of decide. Or if you want some more input from me, then let me know, and you know, and I can help with that. But it really is purely budget dependent. I think some of these pavings stones can be quite shocking, so it can range from, to give you an idea, about £30 to £35 per square metre up to £70–75 a square metre. So you can see there's, you know, there's quite a big difference. So it really does depend on how much you want to spend, and whichever stone we come up with, whatever paving slab we use, we would use the uniform size to create these stepping stones through to connect the two paved areas. Okay, I shall leave it with you. I'm rambling on too much. Have a nice day, and we shall catch up again soon. Thanks, bye.